With Metro by T-Mobile, your hard-earned money goes further. This tax season, there's zero fees to switch. Enjoy Metro's lowest price, just $25 a line for 4 lines. Plus, get 4 free Samsung Galaxy phones when you switch. Now that's the best deal in wireless. Metro by T-Mobile, empowering you to rule your day. All lines lose promo rate if any deactivates. No fees on select phones. Limit 1 per line with eligible port. Excludes sales tax. Limited time offer. Additional terms apply. See metrobytmobile.com.
The entrepreneurial spirit is resilient, and U.S. Bank is here to make sure that no matter what unknown pops up, business owners know that we have their back. Because problem solvers are the ones that keep us all moving forward by finding ways to close gaps, even when distances are being kept everywhere. So whatever you need to adapt and evolve your business, U.S. Bank is here to support you. U.S. Bank. We'll get there together. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. Interesting topic today. And we're going to have a very knowledgeable guy on, Sebastian Bauer, who's going to talk a little bit about his thoughts on the Ravens' need for a more mobile athletic center. Sebastian, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
No complaints. No complaints at all. So folks can find you on Twitter at @ask_Sebastian. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, wonderful. So we love having these very specific short topics. So listen up, folks. If you want to figure out how to get on the show and what makes a good topic, I've already done the production work with Sebastian here, and this is very specific and excellent. Sebastian, lead us in.
Yeah, sure. So I was kind of thinking about how after Matt Skura was injured last year, the Ravens sort of didn't really have a super solid plan to replace him, which gave me a lot of confidence that he would come back just fine. But he really did not seem 100%. And I'm wondering if it's time to think about having another guy, another veteran come in and replace him. Somebody who's familiar with the kind of zone blocking that we do, because zone blocking is kind of the fundamental way that we run our run game through. We primarily run inside zone between the tackles, but I think that if we had a more athletic guy with maybe a little more length, we would be able to run outside zone as well. So basically, like, inside zone is, for those that don't really know, zone blocking is where you sort of block the guy in your zone as opposed to a specific man. Inside zone blocking is very physical, very downhill, and very vertical, while outside zone blocking is very horizontal and very lateral. And outside zone blocking requires a lot of athleticism and a lot of length because the center typically will have to be what's called a reach block in level 2. Mm-hmm. And the problem is a lot of teams don't run outside zone because they don't have the center or the other offensive linemen who have that sort of athleticism or that length. So they just run inside zone instead.
So it takes multiple players to have the reach for that angle blocking capability. We had Matt Skura on the show, and he mentioned that it himself was that, their angles were getting very extreme to be able to block, particularly on the backside when they're creating that crease, and there's a puller missing. So the guy next to the guard is missing next to him.
Right.
He's got to pick up what effectively might be a 3 tech or maybe a 2 tech. It's a one of those two where there's a substantial still amount of room for him to move to his left to get that. Anyway, let's there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And
sure.
You're talking about the Ravens not having a plan was a matter of, after Matt Skura went down and McCary played the rest of the season, you thought if they had serious concerns about Matt Skura not coming back, that they would have addressed it differently in this offseason.
Correct. Yeah, that's basically exactly what I thought.
Okay, so the Ravens did do a couple of things. They got Tristan Colon Castillo, and they kept him around and protected him even after the season started. And they drafted Ben Bredeson with a fairly high pick. I guess he was a 4. There was another lineman I liked a lot better at that exact same spot. New England ended up getting him about 40 picks later. But they got Ben Bredeson, who actually kind of matches the mold of a lot of those other Ravens guys who play on the interior. Very short-armed. And, obviously could have some of the same deficiencies as these other players.
Yeah, absolutely. I never really had thought about Bredesen as a center, and I think he played guard in college. So I sort of pictured him there. And Colon Castillo, I thought was, a normal depth, undrafted free agent guy that they liked and wanted to develop. But yeah, I thought that if I'm a Matt Skura fan. Like, I think he's great. I just don't know if he's how he's gonna do, because he was clearly playing injured. So I thought, bringing in Colon Castillo and drafting a guard was pretty typical Ravens move. Keep the depth, keep the youth, but Matt was their guy. So that's sort of where I thought that was going. But I think that, if Matt Skura can come back, I definitely think he's an option if he's not like seriously permanently injured.
Yeah, we've had that discussion, in fact, today on the offensive line review, talking about whether or not Skura makes sense as a return. And honestly, I don't think there's a great market for him. Yeah, so I think that there is going to be a good chance to sign him for 1 year, for maybe 2, and that really would be the question: is do you want to try and sign him for 2, or just sign him for 1 and hope that he gets back to normal? Their other choices are all young, and at guard, where they had a chance to play DJ Fluker, they didn't go that route with taking the older, potentially better player. They went with options among several younger players. Right. First, Phillips, a rookie, then McCary, a second-year guy.
Yeah, they did a lot of rotation all year, which was really strange to me. But I was into it because I thought it was cool to see all those guys live, because, you don't always get to see those depth players play. Yeah, I think that Skura is definitely a potential to return, but I was thinking, there are some really good players at center who are super familiar with the zone blocking scheme. I know Alex Mack played with Shanahan in Atlanta, and I've heard that there are rumors that the Eagles may not stick with Jason Kelce. He may either be traded or he may be released. I've heard those things. And those are two guys that excel at the inside and the outside zone. So there are definitely options there. I love free agents for the offensive line. I think it's a position where you really need to know what you're doing, and not that development isn't great and some of the guys we've gotten aren't great. But I think that especially at center, because the centers has to do so much in our run game, like you said, I think it's just important to get a guy that we know can make it happen if we need to.
Mm-hmm. I think there are reasons to do it and reasons not to, and this is really turning into a GM discussion, which is cool. We need to cover all angles of this.
Yeah, sure.
But they have 5 guys probably on the roster that would be considered center possibilities, but in some quarters. I would rule out Bozeman immediately because I think he's too valuable to the team at left guard.
Yeah, he's great.
It still leaves you with, and it's a right-handed run game, and they pull many more times from left to right is what I mean by that when I say it. But they have 4 other guys now. Skura, who will not be with the team after the free agency period starts, obviously, so they're gonna have to sign him. Then they have some young guys. They have McCary, who will be entering year 3. And has played some and okay at center. I wouldn't say he's played great. I don't think he played great as a rookie. I think he was okay this year. They have TCC, who we've seen for 2 games, and honestly, there's just not enough to go on. I rated 1 a D and 1 a B in terms of the grades, so I think he was okay, but I don't think he's anything really special. And then you have Bredesen, who's a complete unknown. He hasn't started at the position yet, but arm length tells me that that's his likely ending point with the Ravens.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. It's really crazy how young we are there and how many unknowns there are. And, we used to have Yanda, who was just the pro and was asked to do so many combo blocks and so many crazy things. And now it's just a bunch of young unknowns. And it kind of makes me personally worried as a team that lives and dies by this run game. You really want a guy who knows what he's doing. But I was talking to you about it a little bit earlier. The center is not only like a position where you can upgrade your strength at the run blocking position, but it also gives the opportunity to upgrade the weakness at the pass blocking. So I know we struggled with snaps, we struggled with pass blocking, and this is a player who can make you better at the thing you were so great at, and also improve you in a position where you might have had some deficiencies. So that is sort of a unique situation as far as a need perspective goes.
Yeah, definitely an opportunity to improve. And I think part of what they're going to do is they're going to have to balance the cost with whatever benefit they get out of it. But it is, I mean, I look at it, it's definitely a glass is half empty situation in terms of what they could add to it, or maybe the glass is 3/4 empty in the current situation. So I understand that perspective.
Your home is more connected than ever. So when one kid is schooling the competition,
Got it.
the other is getting schooled,
The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
and you're streaming a webinar for work and the latest episode of your favorite show at the same time, shh, your Wi-Fi needs to be able to handle it. That's why Xfinity never stops working to bring you faster, more reliable Wi-Fi, so you can do it all at the same time. Xfinity, the future of awesome. Learn more at Xfinity.com.
Johnsonville sausage strips are strips of sausage that look and cook like bacon. They come in amazing flavors like original, maple, or chorizo. Now you can transform your BLT into an SLT or turn your bacon cheeseburger into a chorizo cheeseburger. It's not bacon. It's Johnsonville sausage strips. And it's a meaty miracle. Find it by the bacon, even though it's sausage.
The Ravens with a first-year guy a guy who's just finished 1 year, and two guys who've just finished 1 year, and one guy who's just finished 2 years, and then Skura. I think the question even becomes, will they re-sign Matt? But if they did not, I'm still not sure they would go to the open market, to the free agency, and get a center. There is one thing weighing very heavily in the favor of them doing that this year, and that's that the middle class is probably going to get very little of the total dollars of cap that are available, which are very limited.
Yeah.
So they'll go to edge rushers, they'll go other places, but then you're probably going to have a couple centers who are veterans who can be signed in the $1 to $2 million range, probably if they're older in particular.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And yeah, I'm not opposed to Matt Skura coming back at all. But I think, he is not on the roster, obviously, right now because he's a free agent. So you kind of, the decision has to be made. And I'm sure he's one of many options. It could be a possibility, or you could go a different direction.
All right, ask you to handicap this, and you haven't done it up front, and I know I'm asking you to do something. So I want to pick 7 possibilities to play center. And the center, the 7 possibilities are draft, somebody from free agency, Skura, Bozeman, McCary, TCC, and Bredesen. Those are your 7. How would you rank them in terms of most likely to least likely of what the Ravens end up with in opening day 2021?
As far as what the Ravens would do, not necessarily what I would do. I think that,
or you can say, why don't you tell me what you think would be the ideal situation?
Yeah, I think the ideal situation would be to go and try to get an established veteran who really knows what he's doing, like an Alex Mack, like a free agent. Yeah, I do think that knowing the Ravens, I think that they'll probably try to keep their guy Matt Skura, because I think there's not going to be a huge market for him. I think that he's not going to be terribly expensive. I think he's been successful here. He knows what he's doing, they have a lot more information on his injury than we do. So I'm sure that they'll make a good decision regarding that. If he's able to play and he's ready to go, I know they really like him. So I think that is probably what they would do, but I would probably go with the free agent.
Okay, so if you're talking about what Skura did this last year, and I, by the way, free agent number 1, I wouldn't have a problem with either, but Skura did not have a terrible year from a blocking perspective. It was mostly from a snapping perspective that he was really bad. So when you talk about his injury, there's 2 things you could be talking about. One is the knee injury and coming back from that, which was obviously devastating, and another year may really help him further in terms of his ability to get around. There was some mobility questions I had early in the year, but I didn't really cite that as a huge deficiency for Skura for the year as a whole. Obviously, the other thing is when his hand broke open or finger broke open, and then all of a sudden he couldn't snap the ball straight, that's a bigger problem. And that actually impacts. It's a lower frequency but very high severity problem.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it's probably both. I think that, the snapping is a huge issue, obviously, and that is the number one thing you have to get right. But if there are problems with his athleticism, like you mentioned earlier in the year, I mean, it sounds like from what you've charted that he got better over time. But if that is a problem, that's exactly kind of what I was trying to highlight, that athleticism is really important in the zone blocking, and especially getting into that level 2 and making those reach blocks.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think near the bottom of the list would be going with a guy like a Bozeman or a Macari or a Colon Castillo. I don't think that it was pretty clear that they weren't comfortable with Colon Castillo because Macari started over him several times, even when Castillo was ready to go. I know Macari played a lot of tackle at Cal, and he's kind of filled in a number of different spots. So I'm not 100% sure, honestly, where they see him. He might just be sort of a depth kind of piece, like a James Hurst who can play multiple positions. So I would say that probably number one, the draft is sort of that middle of the road likelihood. I think that I can't see the Ravens not drafting an interior offensive lineman at some point in the draft. I feel like they do it every year. So
how about Bredesen relative to Macari or Colon Castillo as options?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I know very little about how they view him because we've seen so little, and he even like back in camp he wasn't taking clear reps. He was kind of all over the place, and obviously it was very limited because of COVID, so they didn't have as much going on that we were allowed to see. So he's a big question mark for me. I'm not really sure what they could do with him. I know I have friends who really like him, and from what I watched, I thought he was, I thought they took him in an appropriate place. Maybe he wasn't the best offensive lineman still there, but I think that he's definitely a dark horse. I'd say of those guys that are the Bosemans, the Colon Castillos, the Macaris, I'd say he's probably the most likely, just because I think that their limitations / with Bozeman, like their ability to play guard so valuably in our system, kind of give them a very unlikely, whereas Bredesen's such an unknown that I don't know. It could be it's 50-50, or you know what I mean? It could go any way. Right. It all depends on how they view him.
Bredesen, came with a rep as a very cerebral player with a very strong memory, and just everything about him physically, as well as those projected traits. Now, the Ravens also had John Urschel for a while, and John Urschel, smart as he was, didn't work out as an offensive lineman. In the case of Bredesen, I think he's likely to work out at center, and I think the Ravens probably do project him there one day. But I'm gonna parrot back your list to you as I heard it, and you tell me where I got it wrong. So you think the most likely thing is that the Ravens, or the way maybe this is the way Sebastian would do it, is number one is you'd go to free agency and find your guy, whether that's Alex Mack or Jason Kelsey or somebody else.
Yeah, definitely.
And number two, you'd re-sign Matt Skura.
Yeah.
Okay. Number three, you'd go the draft. And obviously, I think that makes a lot of sense that the Ravens need to conserve draft capital, but they also have, some options. They've also been very good at drafting offensive linemen late. So maybe that's where you get a developmental player if you can get a year out of a free agent player too. So it's not like one of these strategies is exclusive to the other.
Sure.
All right. And then number four, I have you because you had him ahead of the others, was Bredesen.
Yeah.
And then number five is a tie.
Yeah, any order.
Macari, TCC, and then Bozeman seventh because he's too valuable elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so when I talk about like free agent, it doesn't have to be a big signing like Alex Mack or Jason. Like you said, there might be some guys who are very available later in the year because of the reduced cap and so many teams over the cap. We could get a cut. And we could get a pretty good deal. So that's definitely possible. And I also want to mention that that they could, even if they sign somebody, that does not, like you said, it doesn't stop them from drafting a guy as well. And, we had Eric DaCosta basically came on and said, upgrading the offensive line is such a priority. So I think that they'll probably go out and do something in free agency.
Yeah. It's unusual that they're willing to talk about the current players where you have a lot of youth and say upgrading the offensive line really is something we need to do.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But Sebastian, great topic here. Thanks for a very focused topic and a great discussion. You obviously know a lot about offensive line play. We'd love to have you back on again on another offensive line topic, and we're going to record another show about another unrelated topic right after this, but really appreciate having you on. Tell folks again what your Twitter handle is.
Yeah, it's ask_Sebastian.
All right. Outstanding.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot. Well, we really appreciate you coming. And other folks who want to get in, focus topic, 3 bullets to me by email at filmstudy21@verizon.net or on Twitter at filmstudyravens. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Right now, savings goals might feel out of reach, but with the U.S. Bank mobile app, we can help you put money aside in a way that won't make you miss it. Using personalized insights, you can save in a way that works in real life and all the curveballs that come with it. So let's get you closer to whatever it is you're saving for. Because at U.S. Bank, even our tools are smart enough to put people first. U.S. Bank. We'll get there together. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Spring into Lowe's and plant the seeds of possibility. With premium mulch for just $3.68 a bag and Stay Green 1 cubic foot garden soil just $4.28 a bag, you'll grow possibilities right from the ground, like skipping the grocery store because your yard grew the whole salad. And it grew you tulips, too. Oh, yard, you shouldn't have. Visit your local Lowe's or shop online at Lowe's.com. Lowe's, home to any budget, home to any possibility. While supplies last, mulch offer in store only. Selection and offer availability varies by location. Offers valid through 3/10, U.S. only. Excludes Hawaii.